Okay, this morning we're continuing our series on the Enneagram. And if you are new and this is your first service with us and you've never heard of the Enneagram, my apologies if it feels a little foreign straight out the gate. There are other sermons on our YouTube channel that you can watch and catch up on. We've already covered an intro into the Enneagram as well as types 8, 9, and 1. And the Enneagram, just to give you a real quick recap, is on the surface basically like a personality typing system. And that's the quick and easy way to explain it, but really if you dig deeper, much deeper, you'll find this whole world of self-discovery. It's really a spiritual path towards wholeness and growth. A lot of people get freaked out by the symbol. It is not a pentagram. We are not a cult. It is just an image. And as a graphic designer, I know that it's just a shape. But shape actually has a lot of deep hidden meanings, the circle meaning wholeness or the divine God. And we are found within that being. So just be rest assured, it sounds a lot more intimidating than it is. It's an ancient typing system that has been used in so many ways for us to dig in deep and find basically the questions like, why do I do the things I do? And how can I work towards growth? Divine growth. So the interesting thing that about the word personality, since we're calling it a personality typing system, is the word personality derives from the Latin word persona. And it literally means mask or character played by an actor. That is so revealing straight out the gate, especially when you link it to the Enneagram, because right away we're realizing that our personality or who we think we are often is a mask. It's often a role we play. It's often a character that we think that we are. So if we're receptive to the Enneagram, it really often helps us ask the deeper question, which is, what am I hiding behind my mask? American author and teacher Don Riso writes, "Everyone wants insight into others. Few people are as willing to look so intently at themselves." And that's why the Enneagram is different than any other typing system, because it's not about, look how cool I am, or, oh, look at you. It's all about us and doing deep spiritual growth. And self-awareness gives us an opportunity to grow. It helps us become more functional members of society. And I think we need to be very honest with ourselves that in this time in America, where we're very culturally and politically divided, truthfully now, more time than ever in my lifetime, is a time for self-awareness. It's a time to get in our own selves and get connected with God and become whole and healed and centered. In the words of the famous and wise poet, Michael Jackson, if you want to make the world a better place, you take a look at yourself and make the change. You're all going to be singing that now. Come on. We read in the book of Proverbs 16:2, "All a person's ways seem pure to them, but motives are weighed by the Lord." That might sound threatening, but the word used for weigh here means to equal, balance, or regulate. So another way to kind of understand that is we ourselves might be a little bit oblivious to our own inner motives. And we tend to think we're perfect. Who doesn't? I'm great, I'm pure. But honestly, if we open up ourselves to the divine, we find ourselves weighed and equaled and balanced, which results in growth and spiritual healing. So, this morning as we continue the Enneagram, we're now pushing through to the Heart Triad, or what is called the feeling center, which consists of 2s, 3s, and 4s. I've met quite a few 3s, so we're going to talk about those later. I've only met maybe 1 or 2 4s in this room and a handful of 2s. But I have a feeling there's probably a bit more that I just haven't met yet. So these types, the 2, 3s, and 4s, are the most emotion-oriented, relationship-centered, and image-conscious members in the Enneagram. Of all these types, they have a deep-rooted feeling that they cannot be loved for who they are. So they must project this false image to win approval of others. So I'm about to get really vulnerable into my type, and it's terrifying. First, here's a quote about the twos. We'll start with type 2. The quote is, "They believe that there are two kinds of people in the world, those that like them, and those who don't know them well enough yet to know they like them." Welcome to my world. So when I first took the Enneagram, honestly, I didn't know much about it. And we all want a quick and easy, just give me a test and tell me what I am. That's a good place to start, but you got to dig deeper than that. Because a lot of times, most of you probably have typed wrong. You've probably come up as one number and you're actually something else, and then you later found that number, or you flip-flopped and you couldn't decide, and you probably were a 9. And you really want this certainty with it. And so when I took it, I kept coming up as a 3. And there's a lot of things about a 3 I resonate with. Yet I was a 3 with a 2 wing, and which basically your wing is, we'll talk about it later in the thing, but it's your next number, it's your supporting number. And I kept coming up with this over and over. You're a 3 with a 2, you're a 3 with a 2. And I read about the 3s, and I resonate with 3s. But the 2, when I read about it, I went, oh. It was like someone took the wind out of my sails. It was like they were speaking my innermost vulnerable parts. Whereas the 3 kind of spoke to my, yeah, I'm cool, I'm a leader, I'm this. And that's not really the Enneagram. If you're reading the Enneagram going, I'm awesome, that's probably not the right type for you. True, I'll be honest. It's the one that makes you go, oh, that stung a little, that hurt. That's your type, ding, ding, ding. So be paying attention to that as you're looking through these types. It's the one that really starts to resonate with your core and not in the best ways. So then I knew this was exactly what I was entering. The type 2, they're considered the helper, the giver, sometimes called the lover or befriender. Often the phrase is the need to be needed. And I like to think of the song by Cheap Trick that is, I want you to want me. That's kind of the compulsion of the 2, is like, I need you to need me, I would love for you to love me. It's kind of very codependent now that I'm saying it out loud in front of a whole bunch of people, but it's true. It's true. And I personally didn't resound, the first time I read about a 2, I just read a quick excerpt, and I didn't resound with the helper or giver in some of the language that was used. And once I dug deeper, I realized that it's because I didn't identify with this helper as sort of this quiet sidekick that is always kind of helping and literally giving gifts. And that wasn't a part of who I am, but yet helping and giving of myself and my emotional vulnerability and my presence is very much a part of who I am. So I started to realize as I dug deeper, and we've heard this before, that there's different kinds of people within these types, and they operate in different ways. So for someone who is a type 2, they might literally give gifts. And some type 2s are great at that, remembering everybody's birthdays, giving them cards, etc. Some type 2s are more giving of service, acts of service. How can I help you? What do you need? They can become some of the best volunteers around. And some type 2s are more, I'll give of myself emotionally. And some type 2s, if they're not in a good space, will give of themselves physically. And it becomes this desire to be affirmed and needed. Type 2 is really often thought of as the feminine role. And because it's an ancient typing system, we were dealing with a lot of patriarchal societies. So I will say that if you're a female and you've typed as a 2, you may want to read and see if it truly resounds, because I'll just call it like it is. We've been groomed to be 2s. And that's just a part of our society. We've been groomed to be that helper, that supportive role, when really you might find I'm actually an 8. I'm actually a 3, but this is sort of the role I feel like I have to play. And in the same respect, if you're a male and you're type 2, you're often uncommon, and it kind of seems like a rare number because that is something that society may have even shamed you for. They may have said, you can't be that person that's maybe more soft or compassionate or the helper, the assistant. You ought to be that dominant role. And I believe as society changes and we continue to celebrate emotionally healthy males, this might shift in our world. So 2s at their best, let's start with that, because that's easier and less painful. 2s at their best are relational, loving, generous, intuitive, empathetic, and enthusiastic. Okay, let's go home. 2s at their worst are martyr-like, people-pleasing, indirect, manipulative, possessive, and self-unaware. That's a ouch. Their virtue is humility, but their vice is pride. You'll notice this if you're paying attention with the Enneagram. It's often like a coin, a 2-sided coin, your personality, where you have this one side that is directly in conflict with the other. 2s can be some of the most humble, altruistic, loving people, and yet if they're in an unhealthy space, can be some of the most manipulative, demanding, people-pleasing humans ever. And it just depends on where you're at in your life and your week, your year, depends on where you're at. But the core desire of the 2 is to feel loved and accepted for who they truly are. Now, this core desire is where 2s learn this giving behavior. So from a psychological point of view, many Enneagram teachers believe that you discovered your type at your first childhood trauma, which is called the childhood wound. Not all are in agreement, but there's a large number of them that say, yes, this is sort of how this was formed. And so you have this childhood wound, which is somewhere along the lines as a child, you learned a message about who you were and that it wasn't what you ought to be. Each one of us you don't have to be a 2. Every single type has this message of, that's not who you should be. Now, for some people, this could be literal trauma. And for some of these people, it absolutely is childhood wounds. And that you might feel stirring up as we dive through the Enneagram. For some, it's not trauma. Our parents were wonderful. We had good homes. But maybe they weren't able to give us the love that we wanted because we had different types of personalities. Maybe we needed to be nurtured a certain way and they couldn't offer that. And so you learn either way that you start to develop this persona. And it's as a defense mechanism, as a way to self-soothe, to nurture, and to heal. And so the childhood wound of the 2 is that somewhere along the lines, we picked up the message that we aren't loved for who we are. And in return, we've developed this kind of give to get type of mentality that in hopes of getting our needs met, so if I give to you, maybe you'll help take care of me. And on the surface, 2s seem to be offering love, deep love. But truthfully, if you dig deeper, they're actually searching for it desperately. And in The Road Back to You by Ian Cron, which we've all been reading, 2s live in service to the lie that the only way to win love is through hiding the screwed up, vulnerable people they really are behind the appearance and activity of a cheerful, selfless helper. Ouch. Dennis, wait till it's your turn and you get to talk about 7s. It's very vulnerable, very vulnerable. It's the truth. It is the truth. You learn, I have to hide this part of me. And it wasn't until I heard this song by one of my favorite artists that I had this epiphany, this aha moment of this is my core desire, this is my wound. Singer-songwriter Ryan O'Neal, who's better known as Sleeping at Last. So if any of you have heard of Sleeping at Last, you probably have and don't know it. If you are a fan of Grey's Anatomy, I swear he's been on practically every episode. His music is emotional and powerful. He's a type 9, so in case you type 9s want to know. He did this project, which is beautiful, which is taking music and writing songs based on each personality type, something I've never seen done. It's fascinating. And he did so meticulously, even to the point where each person playing the instrument is that type. So this song called Two, that we'll hear in a minute, and I'll cue you up when we're ready, but this song Two, it was written basically about twos, but played by twos. And since twos are one of the most feeling-centered types, he figured, well, what's the instrument that's most feely? And he decided cello. Someone said cello. You are correct. It's one of those you can't help but just cry when you hear it, right? And so the song, it perfectly captures this desperate, needy two in juxtaposition with a healthy two that learns, I can love without any strings attached. There doesn't have to be a give to get. I can be altruistic. I can love people just the way they are, and in return, I can be loved without giving or doing anything at all. I can't hear that song without getting really choked up about the line, I just want to love you and learn how to be loved myself. For a two, that is the deepest need. And I will speak very frankly that if you're a two and you were raised, if you were two and you are gay, and you were raised in a home that didn't accept you, I can guarantee this is your childhood wound. And you need to learn to be you. All of you. To accept yourself. And I think a lot of numbers can resound with that. A lot of numbers can resound with needing to feel loved and belonging and acceptance. A two really, really wrestles with that. But it's stepping in this, I don't have to do anything to be loved. I don't have to be anything. I don't have to love you first. And Jesus mirrors that for us. God mirrors that for us, a love that's loved first. We don't have to do anything. Now that I've made you all cry, let's go to what type twos do well. Type twos are good at community and relationship building. Obviously, because we're feeling and heart-centered, we care about people. So we want to support and empower others. We're often service-oriented. We can be a healing presence. We're intuitive, sensing the needs of others. And this, as mentioned before, really comes from our ability to learn how to give to get. And so we've tuned into, I think you're this way, you might need this. But if we can use it correctly, we can actually use that intuition not to please anybody, but to actually just be an altruistic assistance and help and love and support for people. We offer optimism and encouragement. So we're obviously one of the most sensitive numbers on the Enneagram. So if you know a two, go easy on us. They can tend to ignore their own development for fear that it might appear selfish. Twos often tend to be the person others go to for help and advice, yet twos rarely do that for themselves. In The Road Back to You, Ian Cron writes again, twos love to jump on their white horse to save the day when others require their assistance, but they can't imagine asking someone to lend them a hand when the situation is reversed. Twos rarely ask for help. At least not directly. And they don't know how to receive it when it's offered. It makes sense to twos that others have to rely on them, of course. But for them to rely on others, never in a million years. This is something that you can see, that pride, that false independence. And it's not a pride like I'm too cool. It's this pride of feeling I don't need anybody. I've learned this message that I don't need anybody. Everyone else has needs. I don't. This can make an unhealthy two extremely lonely and resentful. This can make a two overextend their behavior and boundaries. They'll be the person that says yes, 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 and they're terrible at saying no. It's the two that also it becomes manipulative and almost rule or check mark of lists of behaviors. Well, you did this to me once. This is what can create this type of two if they aren't aware of how they really are. Now, one of the things we see in the Bible, which is fascinating, what's fascinating about the scripture is that you see humanity. What's funny is we've evolved in so many ways, and yet we haven't at all. The core of our being and the problems that we have, they're very consistent. And we see this in the scripture with the parable of Mary and Martha really clearly. We get a picture and a glimpse of an unhealthy pattern of a type 2. And I'm going to go ahead and read the excerpt out of Ian's book because I love the way he puts it. He's really humorous about the story, and he captures it so well. It says, "Twos might find it helpful to read the story of Mary and Martha in Luke 10. The account begins with the words, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to the village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him." Isn't it interesting that it was both Mary and Martha's home, but only Martha gets the credit for inviting Jesus and the disciples to come visit them? Was Mary inhospitable? Or of the two sisters, was it only Martha who felt compelled to meet the needs of Jesus and the disciples? When Jesus and his friends arrive, Martha does what any good two would do, which is set to work making sure everyone is comfortable and that they have what they need. She has probably already washed Jesus' feet, and now she's running around to the point of distraction, making dinner while her good-for-nothing sister Martha is chilling at Jesus' feet. Martha starts feeling jealous and resentful. Everyone else in the room throwing back olives and laughing while she's working her butt off in the kitchen cooking a lamb. Martha gets angry because, as usual, she is doing all the heavy lifting and says to Jesus, "Are you going to let her sit there while I do all the work?" And Jesus says, "I'm not sure, but I think this is," wait, let me rewind. And then Ian says, not Jesus, Ian, whoops. I wonder if Ian ever feels that way, but no. "I'm not sure, but I think this is the only place in the Bible where someone actually orders God to do something. Like I said, hell hath no fury for an overworked and underappreciated two." Jesus knows what's really going on here and replies, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed. Or indeed, only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." So you see this glimpse of a stressed out two, a stressed out Martha, trying to people please. Let me take care of you, and she's missing the entire thing. And I can relate to this all too well. I am notorious for hosting dinner parties. And I have family and friends over, and I'm like cooking, and I want it to be just right. I'll make a big meal, and I'll have the plate. You can ask my wife. I have the place setting just so, and everything's perfect, and I'm excited. And if I'm in a not so great space, I can be back there kind of like, I'm doing this, but I'm the one who took on the task. Nobody asked me to do this. I'm doing this. But you have to pay attention when you're in those moments of, what are my motives here? And in this thing, what I love is that Jesus is very simply like, hey, that's not even the point. Like, come sit down and be with me. And I think as twos, we can get super preoccupied that we miss the most important part of the dinner, which is spending time with our friends and loved ones, being with people. And we can miss that by trying to prove our love or get something from someone. It's really important that twos understand that, because then on the flip side, we can read in 1 Corinthians, we get a look of what altruistic love is like. We see a love that's patient, kind, it's not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, and we see that is how a loving two can be. So let's move along, because I think we are probably going to go along, and we're going to try to wrap this up quick. That we get an idea, that the story of Mary and Martha is a great illustration of this two in stress. So we'll take a quick look at what the two does in stress and in growth. So in stress, needy twos suddenly they become aggressive and kind of domineering, maybe the unhealthy sides of eights. They can often end up controlling, which is wild for a two because we're the least we don't want to be that way. We don't want to appear controlling or needy. We want to be very just go with the flow. So when we're in unhealthy stages, we can act this way, which can result in becoming snappy or resentful, almost selfish, which is really the opposite of the upbeat giving type 2. And then when we move in their direction of integration or growth, 2s become more self-nurturing and emotionally aware, like 4s. This is something I don't know that I mentioned previously, but I should. 2s are really great at ignoring the negative. We only have good, happy, positive feelings. And we can express our bad feelings, but we don't stay there very long. And same with other people's feelings. If you are suffering, we just want to make you feel better. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you also have to rest in, if you're a 2, 1, you're not everyone's savior. And 2, for yourself, you really need to accept those feelings, all feelings. That means bad ones and the good ones, both of them. So growth for a 2 really means that recognizing that 1, they can care for others effectively only when caring for themselves and recognizing their own needs first. It's like putting on an airplane oxygen mask. You can't save somebody until you have taken care of yourself. Otherwise, it will be unhealthy giving. You'll overextend, you'll exhaust yourself, and then you'll be resentful, the very opposite thing a 2 even wants to be. So for tips for a 2, 1, acknowledge your needs and feelings. This means all of them, as I just mentioned. If you're feeling tired, lonely, overextended, acknowledge them. 2, develop boundaries. Boundaries are good. Boundaries are essential. I love this. Remember that no is a complete sentence. Yep, no. It's done, right? It's a complete sentence. And I've been practicing this myself lately. I've been making some big decisions in life and pondering things, and I've had to rest with, Angie, you can say no if you want to. You can say no if you want to. It's okay to say no. And it's amazing when you give yourself permission to do that, you find clarity of what are my motives. Oh, I actually do want to say no, or actually I do want to say yes, and now I know why I want to say yes. It's because I want to say yes, not because that person's asking me to do something. That's something that probably a lot of people can learn from, not just 2s, but that is a very essential thing. Also, allow yourself to be loved. This one is much easier said than done. But you may find that people genuinely just like you for you. You don't have to do anything. They'll just like you for you. Replenish yourself, which means be intentional and do something you want to do. 2s are always other-centered, other-focused. Focus on yourself for a minute. What would make me happy right now? What do I need? And then some guides for spiritual practice. I would advise above and all for everything is to be alone, solitude. And I think that it's in group settings that we thrive because we are loved and we're needed. We belong. It's great. It's when we're alone that we can take time and get a sense of who we really are. It's in that aloneness that we can assess, how am I really feeling? And I also encourage physical prayer, which for me looks like yoga. It really does. For me, it looks like yoga. Meditation is kind of hard for me. I can do guided meditation, but meditation can be hard for me to just sit, which is probably all the more reason why I need it. Yoga brings me an awareness to my whole self, which 2s are really great at forgetting. They're forgetting their own selves. And so doing yoga and actually praying while doing yoga, I might look crazy, but I'm literally stretching and I'm talking to God. And it's a good way to encounter my body, mind, and spirit. And I encourage, if you haven't, if you take long walks, if you've ever done a labyrinth, those are fantastic ways to be in solitude and walk and pray and talk with God. And I want to leave you with some questions for a 2. One is, can I be vulnerable in the present? This is something I've been so aware of over the last year. And I've said this before. I can be really great at vulnerability when it comes to my past, because that doesn't make me look bad. That's in the past. But can I be vulnerable now? Can I ask for help now? And where do other people's needs stop and mine start? drawing an awareness to those boundaries. And who am I when no one needs me? That's a tough one for a 2. When no one needs me, who am I? A lot of times a 2 will feel this ache of almost loneliness, like you have some sort of need to fill, and you should rest, and you're complete as you are. And that's something I'm telling myself. So a mantra I want to leave you with is I belong as I am, and my needs are accepted. Let this be a part of our spiritual life, our prayer life, that we belong as we are and our needs are accepted. During this time, we're going to switch and transition to 3s. I apologize, I went a little long. I know we're all probably going to tend to do that when we talk about our types. We have about 6 different books on the Enneagram. There's so much to cover. But we'll watch a quick video which kind of highlights some of type 3 behavior, and then Anthony will welcome you during this time.
All right, so I guess that's where it cut off. We were trying to cut it so it wasn't too long, but I guess it gives you the idea of the Enneagram Type 3, which, as you can see there, is image is everything. And it's, to me, it's difficult to be a 3 in this country because it seems to kind of back up that image is everything in social media and things like that. And as you can see, the response there, any one of us, regardless of who you are, could actually just put on that persona, like we were talking about, and get a response from the public that would be similar to that, because image is a potent thing. So that's reason I shared that video is to kind of make that point about Enneagram Type 3s, that they are the achievers, they are the performers. They are known as the people who perform, they achieve, and as I said, image is everything. A breakdown of the Type 3 in brief is the basic fear of being worthless. Threes fear being worthless because if they don't perform, if they don't do something that's achieving something, then nobody has a reason to actually value them. So they feel that they're constantly being sized up for what they do. And their desire is to feel valuable and worthwhile. So they often work and perform, or even have the appearance of performing and success, so that people will be attracted to them, because everybody's attracted to success, right? The Enneagram Type 3 with a 2 wing will be like the charmer. That's the person who motivates and is persuasive with their speech. They can charm you. They can combine the helpfulness of the 2 with the image of the successful helper, which would be like a motivator, or somebody who, if you work out, a personal trainer would be a good example of the motivational. I'm going to help you, and I'm going to give you high levels of self-esteem that you can do this. I guess kind of like the coach person. And then the Enneagram type with a 4 wing, which is what I am, is the person who wants to be the professional, the person who's known that I have the image of success, but I know my profession, I know what I'm supposed to do, I'm competent. And I'm obsessed with what I am performing in. Some of the key motivations is they want to be affirmed. They like to hear that you did a great job. That was impressive. That was awesome. How did you do that? Things like that. And that is to distinguish themselves from others, because it's almost like there's a limit of how much attention can go, and if I can win that over against another person, that makes me feel more valuable. I think 3s tend to know the value in comparison to others instead of just intrinsically. By the way, my name is Anthony. I didn't even introduce myself. I was just so focused because this is my first time speaking, and my name is Anthony. I'm an Enneagram Type 3. Hi, One Church. But I just dive right into it. But I want to make sure that I hit some of these points, because I think if you're a Type 3, as I go through this, you'll resonate with a lot of it. And if you know Type 3s, you're going to see not only that stuff in your friends, but also in how our culture kind of caters to Type 3s. They like to have attention, and they like to be admired and to impress others. So having things where people are giving you like a crown or recognition or some type of award, that's awesome for a 3. Their virtue is Let's see the next slide. Next slide. Oh, okay. Virtue is honesty, and their vice is vanity or deceit. So the three has to strive between whether I'm going to deceive people about who I really am and make it look better, puff my resume, or whether I'm going to be honest about who I am. And it's not, I actually talked to Angie about this earlier, it's not that they don't believe necessarily that they're valueless outside of their appearance, is that they identify with their appearance. It's not that I'm looking at how I'm valuable myself, but the only part where my value exists is in my image itself. So how threes manipulate others is by charming others, by adapting whatever image will work. They're very pragmatic and practical. They do what it takes to get the job done. So this can be like mirroring. So if you're in a conversation with a three and you have your arms crossed, maybe they'll sit back and cross their arms too. And maybe if you have your legs crossed, they'll cross them too, to imitate you and to mirror you so that you can become more persuasive in things like that. There's like little things that you can do to win people over. They can play the sycophant, which is the person who sucks up to someone who's in esteem, who's in a powerful situation, in order to climb social ladders. So like if you're a person who's in power, they may suck up to you or show some type of favor towards you so that you can get the upper hand in moving up the social ladder and things like that. They can do highlight reeling, which is instead of your life being a normal life with ebbs and flows, my life is just a series of highlights of successes that never end. And from glory to glory and more glory. And that's how I exist, like that. Another example is that they use trust badges. So if you can have something that instantly makes you, if I can show like anything like an emblem, like that shows that you should trust me, or, as seen on TV, it's like those type of things, status symbols. Maybe I'll have Prada, Gucci, whatever. These are things that show that I'm important. I can put things on. I have these status symbols, as well as resume fluffing. I have all these things I've done, a series of like highlight reeling, and we'll just pad our resume and things like that. So in the next slide, I want to go into how they act when they're how they act under stress and how they act under integration or their growth. When they're adapting an image and it's not working, they'll tend to go to a more apathetic or a disengaged type of position, like a 9. So they may just step back and avoid the situation entirely and try to re-strategize and not even show. They may care, but they'll have the appearance of being apathetic or even feel apathetic because they can't solve it. And they want to solve it. And they want to feel like they're failing, so I'm like, I don't even care anymore. So it's like sour grapes, I guess you could say. And then when they go in the growth pattern, they're cooperative and committed to others. So they can become very loyal to people when they have accepted the fact that they're loved regardless of what they do. They're not just valuable based on their image. And then on the next slide, it shows that Angie, actually we can skip that one because it shows that we're in the Heart Shame Triad, because Angie went off of that already. So what I wanted to do is just jump into the story of Jacob, because Jacob is, I believe, one of the people who exemplifies a type 3 in the Bible. And as the story will show, it's crazy how many things that I noticed as I was going through the story that show that what it's like to be a type 3. So, and Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his prayer. And Rebekah, his wife, conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, "If it is thus, then why is this happening to me?" So he's like, if you're giving me, blessing and kids, then why are they fighting with each other? So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one will be strong, the other, the older, shall serve the younger. The reason why I underline that is because it's important, is because the person who is the dominant child in these times would be the older brother. the older brother was the one who's having the inheritance. That's the one who's favored. That's the one who's admired. That's the one who gets a lot of the money and the legacy. But that role was switched into this one. And this is an important part because I think it ties into what's going on with him as a 3. So next slide, please. So when the days of give birth were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, and all of his body was like a hairy cloak. So they called his name Esau. It's a weird kind of look. But afterward, his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. And Jacob, the name Jacob actually means heel catcher, and it's the idea of supplanting or overtaking somebody. So if you have someone you're contending with them, you overtake them. So that shows that it seems like Jacob, although he wasn't the firstborn, he was trying to fight to be the firstborn because he wanted the success and everything that comes with the inheritance. I mean, you'll see how that applies as we go along, but that's like a little foreshadowing of it. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter and a man of the field, and Jacob was a quiet man dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So you see here, the boys grew up, and one is like the one who's the father's going to like. He's going out and hunting with them and things like that. And Jacob's more of the person who dwells in the house. And so he essentially becomes somewhat like a mama's boy. And he's like inside cooking, which I relate to because I'm more like a mama's boy. And I understand where he's coming from with this. And as you see on the next slide, you can see how this plays out. There we go. And once Jacob was cooking stew, which again, if you want to be the sycophant or suck up to your mom, a great way to do that is to be in the kitchen with her and cook the stew and relieve her of that duty. While he was cooking, Esau came in the field and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, "Let me have some of the red stew, for I'm exhausted." And Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright now." So he found opportunity to take advantage of him. And Esau said, "I'm about to die. Of what use is the birthright to me?" And Jacob said, "Swear to me now." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. So he overtakes him in one way by he found his opportunistic eyes spot an upper hand in the negotiation, and 3s are very persuasive negotiators. And if they see an opportunity to take advantage of a situation, they can easily spot that and maybe act on it. And the way that this worked out is that Esau sacrificed the future promises that he had for the present instead of the inverse. And the way that you sacrifice things is that you sacrifice stuff in the present so that you have the success in the future. But sometimes people are short-sighted. And the 3 will see like, oh, this person is short-sighted. I'm going to make them do the opposite because I'm thinking long-term. So that's the strategy involved there. So another thing is that 3s, they come with the energy of the firstborn. When Angie was talking, she said how the 2 is kind of like the feminine. Well, the way it works is the 1 is kind of like the father, the 2 is like the mother, and the 3 is like the firstborn. And so the energy of the firstborn is that they desire the birthright and the blessing of their parents. They want to actually receive the blessing of God. They want to receive the blessing of their parents. They want to see the birthright. They want when the 3 is born, and the firstborn is born when he's by himself. He has all the attention, and he wants to make sure that dad and mom are looking when he does something awesome, and that they clap and everything like that. So that's kind of like the energy of the firstborn. You can move on to the next slide. Let me see here. Yes, so that was the first instance of where Jacob takes advantage of Esau, and this is the second time. So when Isaac was old, his father, and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, Esau said to him, "Behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death, so go out in the field and hunt game for me, delicious food such as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, so that I may bless you before I die." And then Rebekah comes in, notices what's happening. Remember, Jacob's her favorite son. She's listening, and so when Esau went out to bring it, Rebekah said to Jacob, "I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Therefore, Go to the flock and bring me 2 young goats so that I may prepare them delicious food for your father, such as he loved. And you shall bring it to your father instead to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies. So the mother has become working with him to overthrow the other brother because that's her favorite son. And so Jacob responds. It's interesting how he responds. But Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I'm a smooth man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him and bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing. And his mother said to him, let your curse be on me and go. It's interesting because Jacob doesn't say, I'm not going to do this because it's wrong. He's saying, I don't want to do this because what if I fail? What if I'm caught? The strategy needs to be ironed out before doing it. That's important for the 3 when he's playing out the strategy, that it's ironed out. I don't really care about the morality necessary, but I don't want to do that for nothing. And so Rebekah took the best garments of Esau and put them on Jacob, her younger son, and the skins of young goats she put on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. So he has he's incognito. He has the costume, I guess, to imitate his brother in front of his dad. And he's basically kind of blind anyway, so he can sneak into that. And then she put the delicious food and the bread, which she prepared, into the hand of her son Jacob. So the plan is set. And so next it goes. So he went to, let me make sure. There you go. Okay, so he went to his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am. And he says, who are you, my son? And Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done what you told me. Now sit up and eat my game so that your soul may bless me. But Isaac said to his son, how is it that you found it so quickly? Suspicious, my son, he answered. Because your Lord, your God, has granted me success. So that's important. I think that's a pivotal point of that story because it has so many meanings to what I feel the 3 things. The 3 wants the Lord to grant them success, and they may cover up the way they cheat their way to success by the blessing of God. So that's what he says. This is cover story. And then Isaac said to Jacob, please come near that I may feel you, my son, or know whether you are really my son Esau or not. So Jacob went near Isaac, his father, who felt him and said, the voice is the voice of Jacob, but his hands are the hands of Esau. And he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother's Esau's hands. So he blessed him and said, are you really my son Esau? And he answered him, I am. Then he said, bring it near me, that I may eat of your son's game and bless you. So he brought it near to him, he ate, and he brought him the wine and he drank. So the plan works. So he steals his blessing, and at this point he steals Jacob's birthright. He steals the birthright, and at this point he steals the blessing. And then this is what ensues after that. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, Jacob had scarcely gone out of the presence of his father. There we go. Scarcely gone out of the presence of Isaac, his father. Esau, his brother, came to him hunting, and his father said to him, who are you? And he said, I'm your son, your firstborn, Esau. And Isaac trembled violently and said, who was it that hunted the game and brought it to me? I ate it all before you came, and I blessed him, and yes, he is blessed. So he finds out that he was basically tricked and ended up blessing the wrong son. And it was basically solidified. And I want you to realize that Jacob is a biblical hero. So he deceives his brother, steals his birthright, he steals his blessing, but somehow he's a biblical hero. And I think that's interesting because his life isn't a series of the highlight reel, where he's doing one thing after another, and everything's great. But instead, it's more of ups and downs. It's a series of ethical trials. And life, I guess what I'm saying about that is that life is not going to be all of the good, and the 3 kind of wants to be that success, and then he has these instances. But this is I guess, where am I at? Sorry. Right now, he's taking away my blessing. All right. Oh, there we go. All right. So it says, as soon as Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, bless me also. And then this is where Esau points out, your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing. And Esau said, is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me 2 times, and he took away my birthright, and now he has taken away my blessing. So Jacob is really getting the best of his brother. And I'm going to actually go through this part fast, not and read it. If you can go to the next slide. Basically, Esau gets really angry. He realizes that his brothers cheated him, and he vows that he's going to kill him. And then Rebekah, this is what it's saying, Rebekah overhears that and again jumps in and tries to save Jacob. And he says, go away to Laban until your brother calms down, because I know he's about to kill you. So he gets away with deceiving him twice. He was successful in it, but he says, go away, and time passed, and he let the thing cool down. And ironically, in the series between this time, he goes to Laban, and they go back and forth deceiving themselves in business deals. It's actually pretty crazy. Like there's a series of, he cheats Laban, Laban cheats him, he cheats Laban, Laban cheats him, and then he ends up coming out ahead of the game. But after that, it's that's why I'm trying to get you guys, show you guys a story, because as I think if you read the story of Jacob, it really does give you an idea of a 3. And the next slide, please. And we're just about done because we're about to hit the big moment. This is actually a picture of Jacob's ladder. It's done by, I can't remember the guy's name, I think. But it's a painting. Basically, after he leaves from Esau and is with Laban, he's about to head back to see Esau, and he has this vision from God. And it's a vision of, basically, you could kind of say a stairway to heaven or a ladder to success. And God tells him that he's going to be with him and give him the success that he so desires. He's going to be with him and give him the blessing and the birthright, which he actually said, if you recall, in the beginning of the story where he was about to be born. God came to him and said, God came to Rebekah and said, your son is going to be the one who's getting the birthright and blessing, but he still cheated his way into it. So next, I just wanted to show you guys that picture because it's a pretty cool image. I guess as a 3, if I could do without sleep, I would not sleep. I would just work and perform and just have a slew of those things. But if I had dreams where God was showing me the ladder to success, I would want to sleep more. So then Jacob, in reuniting, this is the moment where they're going to clash. Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau, his brother, in the land of Seir, in the country of Edom, instructed them, thus you shall say to my lord Esau, thus says my Lord, servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed until now, and he's going to bribe him. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male servants, and female servants, and I have sent them to you, Lord, in order that I might find favor in your sight. And the messengers return after sending that to Jacob, saying, we have come to our brother Esau, and he's coming to meet you, and there are 400 men with him. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. I would be too. And he divided the people who were with him and the flocks and herds and camels into 2 camps, thinking if Esau comes and attacks this camp, then the other camp that is left will escape. So he's going into his strategy. Because, hey, what if it doesn't work? If I'm going to bribe him, that might work to get out of it. But if not, I have a backup plan. And 3s will often have a backup plan in these situations. Next slide, please. And so he decides to test the waters, and it doesn't look good. And so the present passed ahead of him, and he himself stayed the night in the camp. And that same night, he arose and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of Jabbok. And he took them and sent them across a stream and everything else he had. And this is important. This is right before he's about to confront Esau. And Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. And Jacob is heel catcher. He's one who supplants people. And the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob. He touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint, and he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let go of me, because the day is broken." And Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And this is where the kicker comes, because who it is. And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." And this is the first time in the story where Jacob is honest about his identity. He lies and deceives and he tricks. And the first time he's honest about his identity is in this moment. And he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed." So the test came where he actually was about to reconcile with his brother, and God comes down and says, "I'm going to wrestle you, and if you beat me, I'm basically going to give you a blessing." And he actually succeeds. So it kind of solidifies that, well, actually, I'll just go and read it. Please tell me your name. And he says, "Why is it that you ask him my name?" And therefore he blessed him. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for saying, "I have seen God face to face, and yet my life was delivered." And the sun rose on me as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip, probably a sciatic nerve. And so after this happens, Esau does arrive, and he accepts Jacob with open arms, and they're reconciled. And he has the courage to actually do this because he feels that he has the blessing of God. And it seems as though God was with him the whole time. And the way I take away from this is that, why did I lie and why did I cheat and do all these things if in the end God was going to bless me anyway? And I think that's the struggle of the three, to why would I try to cut corners if God is going to bless me? So this is, in closing, this last part here. Image is everything. And in my wrestling with God, I found out that, yes, the image of God is everything. The image that we are all created with the same created in the image of God, and have corresponding virtues or holy ideas, each Enneagram type. The 9s are the peacemakers, that's the image of God. The achievers are the image of God. The helpers are the image of God. Everybody has the image of God, and that is the part that's important. The thing that you have in your identity that brings value, the thing you bring to the table. And the harmony of the human race is all in the image of God, because we're all made in the image of God. And the image of God cannot be taken away due to failure or lack of performance. So even if I fail in my life, I'm still made in the image of God, like other people, like everyone else. And the image of God is the Trinity and the communion of persons in the divine dance. So you can build your character instead of focusing on the image, because your relationship depends on it. And the image of God is success in the midst of failure, resurrection after death, because the cross, when Jesus dies, that looks like failure because he's dead, but then he comes back afterwards. So a lot of times when you have a failure, I think as a 3, you can keep in mind that after that you will come back from that and have success. So lastly, I guess being made in the image of God, I cannot help to imitate and strive to be like my Heavenly Father. Being like the other types, I can't help but fail in that. And yet there's still value in the one who wrestles with God. And it's not the same as belief. It's about wrestling with the idea of God. It's about trying to figure this thing out of life, so that you can hopefully hear the words from God, "Well done, good and faithful servant, enter into the joy of your Lord." Because I think we all want to hear that, but especially 3 wants to hear, "Well done" from his Heavenly Father.